Hey everyone, thanks for joining me again at Prairie Wings. I'm Merl Mayer and I'm working on my own car again. As you can see, I have the vet blown apart. This video is not about all of that. I have other videos about upgrading the fuel system in this, and we're going to be putting water methanol on. So those videos, watch for those. In this video, what I'm going to be dealing with is being able to read the air-fuel ratio. The problem is the catalytic converters are bolted to the manifold, so there is no room to be able to stick in a wideband and leave it in, and I'm going to solve that problem. People are going to have a different opinion on this, and they're going to argue with me on this point, and I really, I want to hear your arguments, but this is what I'm doing. I've dynoed lots of cars that still have cats on, and for what I'm using, the purpose of this car, this is our car that we get away in, go for trips in the mountains. It's a convertible, as you can see, and I don't want to smell the exhaust in the thing. If I was going to get serious, I'd change the diff, I'd put tires on it, I'd strengthen everything up. But this thing, you know, it's a supercharged car. I have a lot of fun in it, and I'm leaving the cats in, and I'm going to show you the problem that we have. So if we go underneath this car and look up in, this is the exhaust manifold. And no, I'm not putting headers and other exhaust on. I'm leaving the stock exhaust on it. I'm just adding boost. So this inside here is the stock narrowband oxygen sensor. I'll talk more about narrowband and wideband in a second. But the catalytic converter bolts right to here, so there's no pipe in there. And in order for me to dyno this, I want to hook on, I'm doing this to both sides. I want to hook a wideband into both sides, one for HP tuners. It's the tuning tool that I use to tune this car. And I'm just going to take you over to the bench here. So I'm going to be using the wideband for HP tuners and the dyno. So this is the part that bolts right to the manifold. This bolts up to the manifold, and this is the catalytic converter. So the only spot that I have to put in another oxygen sensor is right here. You may say, oh, what is this oxygen sensor over here? Well, this is the downstream oxygen sensor. I'm going to put the camera down and we'll talk a little bit about oxygen sensors so you understand where I'm going. I wasn't planning on getting real deep into oxygen sensors and the science behind this. It was going to be a video about putting one in here, but I think it's probably important to describe what's going on. So in V engines, this is a V8, there's usually going to be 4 oxygen sensors, one pre-cat, one post-cat. So if I took a reading out of the post-cat, I would have conditioned exhaust. So what happens is I really didn't want to get into science class. I was going to just be throwing a wideband bung in here to put the sensor in. Now, a wideband sensor will screw right into the same threads as a narrowband. But I think it's going to be important that I kind of go over what oxygen sensors are, how the fuel's burned and stuff like that. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the short science class that I'm going to give you. It's going to be pretty basic rough. So what Stoich is, and that's what we need to know about, the stoichiometric air-fuel ratio, it changes for different fuels. Old gasoline is 14.7 to 1. And that means it's 14.7 parts air to 1 part fuel. Now, when you hit that number for gasoline, that is considered the perfect burn. That is actually, when you're at 14.7-ish, it isn't exact. When you're at that, you actually have all of the fuel burned. And that is what a narrowband sensor looks at. Now, the thing is with our fuels, they got messed with. We have modern fuels and they don't actually burn at 14.7 to 1. If you look in a more modern tune, well, there's 2 different things that they do, but a lot of the modern tunes that don't have a flex fuel system in, and a flex fuel system uses a sensor in the gas line to detect how much alcohol is in it. we're not getting into that. But if I looked into a non-flex vehicle in a more modern tune, because they blend a bunch of alcohol in, the Stoich actually changes to 14.1. So they have an alcohol content in 14.1 parts air to 1 part fuel. Now, what that means is we're going to be going through more fuel. Fair enough. I don't know why they messed with fuel. Anyway, we have fuel now that we have to tune for. And the thing about it is if we're looking at a narrow band, set Stoich aside, set all of that aside, we are going to be talking about the wideband and narrowband sensor. So this narrowband sensor senses its target Stoich. So whatever is in the computer for the tune, whether it be 14.7 or 14.1, and you're going to see that if you're a tuner and you see the target air fuel ratios, they change. Anyway, whatever your target is, this is looking for that exact number. It looks whether it's below or above it. It doesn't know how much below, how much above. It's always trying to target 14.7 to be the most efficient burn. However, with a wideband sensor, what we're doing is we are actually looking at a wider band. It doesn't just target the Stoich. It can read, depending on the sensor, different sensors read different variances, but there's very common sensors that are, I'd say, more generic sensors, and they can target anywhere from, like, a generic, like, not hugely wide sensor can target anywhere from 9 to plus 16, maybe up to 20s for a good, decent sensor that is going to be able to go in. Now, I have a V car which has 4 sensors in it, so a V8 engine. So that means that it has exhaust manifold on one side, one on the other, and it has a sensor living in the manifold here and a sensor here. You may ask, why do I need to add another sensor into here? Well, this is a catalytic converter. The catalytic converter, which I'm not going to get into, conditions the exhaust so that we have clean stuff going out the tailpipe. So if I take and I put my wideband sensor in this hole, so I can still use the front sensors up here to do the regular fueling, I actually would be reading very stable fuel because it's, or exhaust, because it's been conditioned before it goes out the tailpipe. So this sensor, not in play for us for tuning, because we'd be tuning maybe, well, we wouldn't be tuning. We'd be looking at what's going on in here. So I need to put that wideband sensor in here so that I can take the information from here and put it into the HP tuners, which I'm using to be able to tune the engine, how it burns. And why am I doing that? Well, I want to get the best fuel economy as I can on the highway, and on the track, or when I'm getting into it, like the off-road play stuff, I want to keep my tune safe. So I'm going to be fat, which means not on the lean limit. I'm going to be going richer. So what is a richer mixture? Well, it depends on what you're doing for the sport you're doing, but if I wanted to be in a richer mixture, and each engine likes a different mixture, but a richer mixture, just for comparison, if you take Stoich of gas, which is 14.7, and I want to richen it up, I am going to be using less air. So my AFR for a richer mixture would be like, let's say 12. If I am lean, which would be very dangerous if I was on the throttle, would be in that 16 range. And if you look at the window which fuel ignites, well, it's going to have a hard time igniting there. You're going to actually live in diffusion, but we won't get into that. That's how diesel kind of runs. That is that for the science class. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to drill a hole in here. We're going to put a bung in here, and I have room inside that I can do it. No problem, because The catalyst material starts here, and I have room to get that oxygen sensor in right here. It's going to be beauty. Okay, I have two wideband sensors here. Now, this sensor is for the dyno. This sensor is more of a lab grade sensor. It's a better sensor. It's very expensive. This sensor is the sensor that I tie into the tuning tool. Now, I'm looking at both of these and comparing them. They're both very good sensors. And they are, just for interest's sake, if you're doing this, they are almost the same length, but this one is longer. So when I'm looking at putting something in the front of a cat, so the catalyst material, I can measure it exact, but it ends where this bend is here. So first of all, what I want to do is see what my catalyst is made out of. So this is a magnet, okay? And this magnet is not sticking to this. It has a tiny bit of stick to it, but it's a stainless steel, okay? This magnet has got lots of stick to steel. So what I'm doing is I am taking a 300 series stainless. This is probably a low grade 300 series stainless on exhaust. They'll do that. They don't have the best stuff, but a lot of exhaust is 400. So you got to know how you're welding it on with what kind of rod you're using. But anyways, what I want to do is I want to put it as close to here as I can so that when I put this in, because I have that much sticking inside of here, I want to make sure that I have clearance that this isn't touching the catalyst material inside. So the catalyst material inside this sensor there's nothing going to be happening in the front of it. I'm going to get a good pure reading out of it. I just don't want it touching and blocking the sensor ports in here. So that is what I am doing. I've rough measured with my fingies in here. I have a lot of room in here. So I am going to be drilling a hole, putting this sensor as close as I can to this flange, and I am going to be making sure that I have clearance that I can get a wrench on without interfering with the flange. That's the placement I'm going with. Okay, these are what I drill holes for oxygen sensors with. A couple really good quality ones. Now, because I don't want to damage the catalyst inside of there, if I use this one, I would be right into the catalyst material because the hole size is right there. That's a long ways. That's way into the catalyst. So if you're going to drill a hole in this, especially if you're going to do it in the car like guys will do, there's no room to do it in here. This gives me a lot of clearance to be able to go in. So depending on the size of this, even a hole saw, you'd have to use a short bit so that you don't get into the catalyst. Very interesting. Not what I expected. Not happy. This is a dual wall exhaust. So what I'm going to have to do before I weld the bung in is I actually have to weld the two layers together because I don't want exhaust going between the two layers. So that's how you deal with that. Not happy though. Don't like that. The bits don't like it either. Just be careful that if you're leaving this in, that it isn't getting against the table. Wow. Time to get a clamp out. Lots of clearance in between there and the catalyst material. I just decided I'm going to pull that sensor out. They do make a special socket for these if they're seized in. Usually get them with a wrench. Just to be clear, I am not sponsored by, I don't know who these guys are, but Solar Flux is the name of the stuff that I use. Because it's stainless steel, I have to protect the inside of it. Normally you set up a back purge, whatever. I wouldn't be able to back purge between the layers. I have lots of other videos on how to use the Solar Flux, but I am going to be putting Solar Flux in between the layers to protect that, as well as I'm going to be putting it on the inside of this. So Solar Flux is the very cheap, very effective option for not having to back purge your stainless, especially on exhaust. It's a beautiful product. Works well. Used it for years and years and years. It's nice, nice stuff. Just a little dab will do ya. I'm hoping you can see the layers. Now I have Solar Flux in between and I have Solar Flux on the inside. And what I have to do is weld between these layers, weld them shut 100% so that I can have that sealed where it isn't going into the outer case. And then the other thing is, I don't know the exact composition of the stainless that's used in here. So I am using a 309 wire, and what that is to do is to weld. What I know is this is actually 304 stainless bung. It's either 304 or 308, 308 I guess. Anyways, to kind of an unknown, and this rod is made to weld stainless to dissimilar metals. So 309 is what I'm using. So the gap is getting filled. I got to move the camera so that I can get in there to weld. And once that's done, I'm going to die grind it up and get that bung welded on. I have this rotated around the other direction. I took and just flattened the top of this so that I can get this sitting the way I want it to. Now, that's the point. In this, you can't tell it's facing down, but anytime that you put an oxygen sensor in, doesn't matter where it is, you want to make sure that however the oxygen sensor is, it's in the top half of the pipe. So if the oxygen sensor is sitting in where it's in the side of the pipe, you want it tipped down. And the reason being is for every liter or gallon of gas you burn, you produce a liter or gallon of water. It's just the science involved in it. And if I get water or moisture into this, I'm going to have an issue. On a cold start where the exhaust is cold, we have it condense inside there, and we don't want to have a collection of water in the oxygen sensor. So when this is hot, that's not an issue. It's going out as steam or vapor or whatever you want. Steam, I guess. Anyway, and so when this is in here, I have it underneath the car, sitting where this sensor, well, this is a narrowband, but where the sensor is a tiny bit down. And so that is the key to doing it. It welded up really nicely though, and I am ready to tack this on. I'll get it tacked on and weld it out, and then we will take a look at it. Just gotta make sure. Tons of clearance for a wrench. Try and make it so you can see it. Little baby tack on there. Now I can adjust it around, tighten it down, whatever I need to do to move it around, make sure that the oxygen sensor fits inside. So I will finish getting this all done, get in a position. Maybe I can show you some weld. I don't know if the camera will get it. hopefully some of that footage worked out. Now we're going to let it cool down a little bit, and I'll show you how I finish that. Now, how to finish this, if I'm not careful, the inside of this is going to give me issues. So I solar flux the inside. Why did I do that? Well, on stainless, if you don't protect the inside with a back purge or something, you're going to end up with sugaring. So I got to get that out. So this is a oxygen sensor thread chase. Cheap, easy to buy. You'll feel that solar flux coming out of there. It's not hard to get out. It does crystallize, but it is nothing major to get out. You just want to run in with the thread chase. Clean it up. You want to make sure it bottoms out all the way without any effort. If you were to do this on steel and MIG weld and stuff, you'd probably want to make sure the threads are protected as well and put this through, because the last thing you want to do is mess up an oxygen sensor, have it stuck in there because the threads are a mess. To me, that turned out pretty good. It's going to be a nice little install. The exhaust is back in place, and there is the downstream sensor. So that's the post catalytic converter sensor. And then if we look there, there's the bung. So yeah, it's a little, it's not fun to get at when you have to crawl under the car to get it, but guess what? That's our best option. And then if we look, you can't even see it from here. We'll see if we can see the other side. Way up top there, there is the other oxygen sensor up on the manifold. So we're good to go, and don't mind all the lube from taking it apart. And we'll take a look at what it looks like inside the computer. Right now I'm data logging the actual factory oxygen sensors, and they are whizzing all over the place, the voltage, and we can see our fuel trims and everything. They're out a little bit. We got to neaten up the tune down there a bit. And then I have this actually plumbed into the laptop, but I'm not gonna pull that screen up right now. But we have the AFR, and then that is the one for tuning. Then this one here is the one that the lab one that they double check with the dyno. And so in order to properly tune this, I actually have fuel pressure gauges in, everything all plumbed into the computer. Takes a lot of wiring to get that going on, but what I am hoping is that this video helped you understand the placement and why we need to put those oxygen sensors there. We got to correct fuel, we got to understand how we're going to correct fuel, and I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and if you have any comments or questions, throw them in that comment section. Thanks a bunch. Have a wonderful day.